How's it going, guys? Today we have another YouTube video. This is FriedVice, and we're going to be taking a look at which Pokemon type is definitively, objectively, the very, very best of them all. So here we go. We're going to start. We have obviously quite a few tiers here. We have S, great, above average, average, below average, very bad, trash. And actually, the way we're going to look at these, the way we're going to rank these, I did the math. I calculated, I figured out definitively based off of mathematics which type is the best and which is the worst. And the way I did this is I assigned point values based off of type resistances, type super effectiveness, immunities, all these things. And let me tell you, I was actually quite surprised by the results, and you might be too. So the way this works is for every time you attack on offense, if you're able to hit another opposing Pokemon type for neutral damage, you get 1 point. And for super effective damage, 2 points. So for example, Fire can hit 4 other types for super effective damage. That essentially gives Fire 8 points. However, if you hit another type for not very effective damage, resisted damage, you'd lose 2 points. So Fire also hits 4 types for not very effective damage. So then they'd lose an additional 8 points. So there can be things that cancel out. Now, if you were to attack with a Pokemon type, let's say electric into ground, that would be an immunity. So electric would lose 3 points for that. Okay. Now, so for looking at defense, if an opposing type can hit you for neutral damage on defense, you'd lose 1 point. Same thing for super effective damage. If you're hit for super effective damage on defense, your type would lose 2 points. All right. And so now if you're able to get hit as a Pokemon type and resist that damage, you would gain 2 points. And if a type was to try to attack you and your type would nullify all damage due to an immunity, you would gain 3 points. So the way it actually ends up working out is on offense, you typically would gain points because there's lots of neutral attacks. And on defense, you pretty much lose points because there's lots of neutral attacks that hit you. So let's take a look at how this actually worked out. Let's start with the normal type. So the normal type, when it hits things, it doesn't hit anything for super effective damage. There's things that resist it. Ghost is immune. On defense, I mean, it has 1 immunity also to Ghost, but it's weak to fighting. Overall, normal type is actually kind of bad. And not just kind of bad, it's very bad. But it's going to be at the top of the very bad tier. Okay, now let's go over to Fire. Fire is actually quite a good type, I've found. Fire hits things super effectively and resists things an equal number of times. And 4, there's 0 things that are immune to fire. Fire actually resists 6 different types, and they're only weak to 3 types. And that actually means Fire is a great typing. Fire is exceptional. One of the best typings in the game. Next up, let's look at Water. Water hits on super effectively 3 and resists another 3. It also, defensively though, it defends well against twice as many types that it's bad against, 4 versus 2. Water has 0 immunities, and Water is actually going to be an above average type here. Next up, we have the Grass type. Oh boy. Okay, so speaking of things that are not good, Grass can hit super effectively 3 types, but it is resisted by 7 different types in the game. Grass is actually one of the worst offensive types in the game. On defense, it resists 4 types, but it's weak to 5 types. So it doesn't even make up for it defensively. Grass is trash. Unfortunate. Sorry, Grass type fans. Next up, we look at Electric. I was actually surprised by Electric. I thought Electric was going to be better type, but it's only super effective against 2 types. 3 types resist its attack, and there's even a type that's immune, Ground. And then defensively, it's not that much better. It is only weak to 1 type, but it only resists 2 types. So Electric is actually below average. Next up, we take a look at Ice. Wow, Ice is also pretty bad. Ice, I thought Ice was better offensively, but Ice is actually only good against 4 different types, and there's 4 types that resist it. Defensively, Ice is honestly, I think, the worst type defensively. It only resists 1 type itself, and then it's weak to 4 other types. But because it's still pretty good offensive, at least average, it's going to be just in the very bad tier here. Next up, we're going to take a look at Fighting. I thought Fighting was going to be one of the best types. I thought Fighting was a really good type, but until I looked at it objectively, Fighting is actually really bad. This is going to be the one that I think might surprise the most people. Fighting hits 4 types super effectively. 4 types are resisted. Fighting Let's start that over. Okay. Fighting is the one that surprised me the most. I thought fighting was one of the best types, honestly, in the game, but fighting is actually pretty bad. I mean, offensively, it's good. I mean, it hits 5 types for super effective damage. That's the most in the game. Yet there's 5 types that resist it. And in fact, fighting damage-wise does nothing to ghost types. So it has 1 type that's immune to it. Then defensively, fighting is just kind of average, where it resists 3 types and it's weak to 3 types. But because, honestly, all of these together, even though it has such high positives, it also has such high negatives. And the way the math works is that actually brings fighting into the very bad tier. Again, this is just based off of objective math, guys. And if you think that you can come up with better math, let me know in the comments down below. Next up, poison type. Poison is not super great in terms of offense. It only hits 2 types for super effective. It's resisted by 4, and then it has a steel type, does no damage against. However, defensively, poison is really good. Poison resists 5 of the types of the game, and it's only weak to 2. So poison, because of its good defensiveness, gets put in the average tier. Next up, we have ground. I thought ground was super good. Ground is really good offensively, tied with the most types. It's can hit super effectively with fighting with 5. Ground is only resisted by 2 types, although there is 1 type that has an immunity to ground. If we look at defensively, though, ground only resists 2 types and is weak to 3, but it does have an immunity in defense, and because of all those, it actually gets put in the average tier. Next up, we have Psychic. Psychic type can hit 2 types super effectively. It resists 2, and then when it attacks, there's only 1 type that is immune to it, and that is Dark. Then if we look on the defensive wise of Psychic actually is kind of okay defensively, but it ends up being worse because it's weak to 3 different types and only resists 2. So Psychic ends up falling kind of with Electric here in the below average tier. And I'll show you guys sort of the math at the end and how the graph that I made pans out. Next up, we have the Flying type. And Flying is actually pretty good. Offensively, I mean, it hits 3 types for super effective. 3 types resist it. It has 0 things that are immune to its attacks. And then on the defensive wise, again, 3 and 3 in terms of super effective and resistances, but it is immune to ground. And because, though, there's so many things that flying can hit for neutral damage, flying actually goes in the above average tier. You'll find that if there's types that something can hit for neutral damage, it actually goes much higher up. So the less things that it can hit for neutral, the less points that it gains. Now let's take a look at Bug. Earlier we were talking about how Grass was one of the worst types of the game. Bug is actually by far the worst. It has the exact same stats as Grass does in offensive. There's only hitting 3 types for super effective, and honestly 7 types resist it when it attacks. And then defensive-wise, it's worse than Grass in that it only resists 3 types, but only 3 types can hit it for super effective. Next up, let's say we have Rock. So the Rock type, I thought Rock type was better. I mean, it's good offensively, and it can hit 4 types for super effective damage, but 3 types resist Rock's attacks. Defensive-wise, though, Rock resists 4 types defensively, however, 5 types can hit it for super effective damage, and there's 0 resistances for the Rock typing, and that makes Rock one of our average types. Okay, now we have Ghost. Ghost is actually one of the best types of the game. If you play Sword and Shield competitively, I think you would know that. Ghost, it can hit only 2 types for super effective damage, however, it was only resisted by 2 types, and there's only 1 type that's immune, in normal type. So that means the vast majority of the types of the game, there's only 3 types that it can't be hit for super effective or neutral damage. Then we look defensively, and it is great defensively in that it actually is immune to 2 types, normal and fighting. There's 2 it resists, and there's 2 it defends well against, there's 2 that it's weak to, in Dark and Ghost itself, and so Ghost actually is one of the best types in the game, in the great tier here. Okay, now we have Dragon. So Dragon is actually incredibly good offensively because it can only hit 1 other type for super effective damage, and that's Dragon. However, the only type that resists it is Steel, and its only immunity is Fairy. So Dragon can hit every other type in the game for neutral damage. And then defensive-wise, there's 4 types it resists, and it's only weak to 3 types. So Dragon is definitely one of the better types of the game. Next up, we have Dark. Dark was introduced in Generation 2, along with Steel. And Dark is good against 2 types in the game. It resists when it attacks 4 types, though, resist Dark, which that's not good. There's 4 types that resist the Dark type. However, defensively, Dark is a pretty good type. It defends well against 2 types. It's weak to 3, but it does have an immunity, and that actually places Dark kind of just in the average tier here. And that, again, it can hit a lot of types for neutral damage. Next up, we have the Steel type. And let me tell you, this is what really, really surprised me. Not just that Steel is by far, by the way, the best type, but not only is it the best type, it's so much above and beyond. Oops, let me spell Steel correctly. It's so far above and beyond all of the rest of the types of the game that it gets its own tier. Steel type, and this is primarily only because of how good Steel is in defense. Now let me tell you, Steel is good against offensively 3 types. 3 types resist it, whatever. But on defense, Steel resists 12 different types of the game. That's more than double the second best defensive type in the game, which is Poison. Steel is by far the best defensive type in the game, and it's immune to one other type, Poison. Steel is incredible, and I'll show you guys how the math works out at the end. And then lastly, we have the Fairy type, and Fairy fits in also another great tier here. It is super effectively hits 3 Pokemon types. When it attacks, it's resisted by 3 types. On defense, though, it's great. It has 3 resistances, it's immune to one other type, and it's only weak to 2 types in the game. Now, also, I do want to let you know and inform you again that these are sorted in order in the tier. So Fire is the best, I believe, in the great tier, even though it actually ends up being, in the end, point-wise, tied with Ghost. But I put Fire higher because Fire is actually super effective against Steel, the best type in the game. Likewise with Ground and Rock here. Ground and Rock should be tied type-wise, but I put Ground higher because it can hit Fire and Steel for super effective damage. Rock can also hit Fire, but it can hit Ground hits that Steel typing for super effective damage. And then again, the rest of these are sorted in order by which one is better than the other in terms of that math. So now let's take a look at the math itself. All right, so here we are looking at a graph that I made through my Excel spreadsheet. Again, the way I calculated this is if a type could hit another type for super effective damage, it gained 2 points. If it could hit another type for neutral damage, it gained 1 point. If a type attacked another type and was resisted, it lost 2 points. If a type attacked and was negated by the immunity of the defending type, it lost 3 points. And now take a look at this. So we look over here, there are 2 types that do not even gain a single point in the offensive category, and that would be Grass and Bug here. Whereas the other types, the types that are the best offensively, are actually Ground, Rock, and Ghost, followed by Water, Flying, Dragon, and Fairy. Those are the best offensive types, and it even surprises me that I thought Fighting was one of the best offensive types, and it's way down here at the bottom, tied with Poison. Likewise, I thought Ice and Electric were also incredibly good types, but they're also very far down in the offensive rankings. Now, if we take a look at defending, again, in defense, if you completely are immune to another type, you get 3 points. In defense, if you resist another type, you get 2 points. If another type hits you for super effective damage, though, you lose 2 points. And if another type hits you for neutral damage, you lose 1 point. And that last part is key. Again, if you are hit for neutral damage, you lose 1 point. And because of that, every single type in the game should essentially be losing points on defense. That's kind of how I organized it. In the offense, you gain your points, and defense, you lose your points. And that's true for every type except Steel. Look at this. This is what sets Steel so far and above all the other types in the game. Defensive-wise, it gains 13 points on defense, where every other type loses points. And again, if we compare, especially Ice is by far the worst defensive type, losing out on 19 points, followed by Normal and Psychic are so bad defensively. They're just bad. There's so many things can hit it for either super effective or neutral damage. So now if I add up all the points that they gained versus the points they lost, and we go down here to the sum of all of those points, you can see the types that stand above it and beyond the rest. Again, steel is just so far and above every other type in the game. Of course, it needed its own tier. There's only a handful of types that even end up positive in this, and that's fire, ghost, water, flying, fairy, dragon, rock, and ground. Every other type ends up negative in this. And some of those types, like I said, bug and grass and even ice, are really, really bad. So again, guys, this is how I ended up organizing and bringing together all my thoughts and trying to come up with the best tier list for objective Pokemon types based off of the math. And if you guys think you can come up with a better way of doing the math, please let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in more content like this, or if you're just interested in Pokemon in general, make sure to hit a like and subscribe to the video. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you want to check out any of my other content, it'll show up pretty much on the screen right now. Otherwise, thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bye.